Hello everyone, I am the 9 Dots guy. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about a Chinese version of the Shawshank Redemption that the vast majority of people have never heard of. I say this man is the Chinese Andy Dufresne without reservation. In fact, he surpasses the fictional character. He traveled from the north to the south, and from the south back to the north. His entire journey of prison breaks and escape covered 15,000 kilometers. Do you know how long the Long March of the Chinese Red Army was, which took place between 1934 and 1935 to escape the encirclement of the Kuomintang? Growing up, we were always told it was over 12,500 kilometers. But if you take a ruler and measure it on a map, how far did the Red Army actually walk? It was definitely not 12,500 kilometers. That 12,500 figure is a propaganda number. But the man I'm talking about, this Chinese escaped Andy, his 15,000-kilometer escape route was not propaganda. From his hometown in Shanghai, he first went to the Beimaling farm in Anhui province. He escaped from Beimaling back to Shanghai, only to be escorted back. Then, he escaped from Beimaling farm again, fleeing all the way to Lushui in Yunnan province, on the China-Myanmar border. He broke out of prison again at the China-Myanmar border, was caught again, and initially sentenced to 6 years. During his imprisonment, his sentence was increased by another 20 years. Unable to endure it, he escaped again in 1969. From Yunnan, it took him 14 days to walk out of the mountains and into Sichuan province. From Sichuan, he made his way back to his hometown, Shanghai. And from Shanghai, he ran north. Do you know where he went? He actually ran all the way to Erenhot on the China-Mongolia border. Then, in 1972, he escaped into Mongolia. He stayed in Mongolia until 1981, finally returning to Shanghai from Mongolia. In 1983, his wife and children followed him back to China. Think about it, 14 years of prison breaks and life on the run. A journey of over 15,000 kilometers. He broke out of prison 4 times. And the last time, he succeeded. This brave man's name is Xu Hongci. He was from Shanghai, China. Before I tell this thrilling story, I must explain the historical background of China at that time. Otherwise, you might not fully understand that absurd and cruel era. He came from a good family background, born in 1933. He joined the Communist Party of China at the age of 15. In 1948, before the founding of the People's Republic of China, he entered the East China Bureau of the Communist Party to work for the Youth League. At that time, he was already in contact with many important figures in the Youth League. After the founding of the PRC, he continued his work. In 1952, he participated in the Second National Congress of the New Democratic Youth League. At this Congress, he was received by Mao Zedong and Liu Shaoqi. At that time, he was not even 20 years old. Later, he entered the Shanghai First Medical College to study. He had received an education that was very rare in China at the time. He was fluent in English, Russian, and German. His knowledge of physics and chemistry was profound, and he was studying medicine. He could have completely become a top medical expert, admired by everyone. But fate played a joke on him right then. Time marched into 1956. In April of 1956, the People's Daily published an article titled "Let 100 Flowers Blossom, Let 100 Schools of Thought Contend." The author was Liu Dingyi, the then minister of the propaganda department of the Central Committee. What did this article mean? It meant, look, after the founding of the country, we have basically completed the socialist transformation. The 3 anti and 5 anti-campaigns have shown initial success, landlords and counter-revolutionaries have been largely killed off. However, in the process of doing these things, it is inevitable that problems have arisen. We can't just report good news and hide the bad, right? So, you intellectuals and people from all walks of life, you must offer suggestions to the party and the government. If mistakes exist, correct them, if not, keep improving. Blame not the speaker, be warned by his words. This is what Mao Zedong said. Everyone should feel free to speak out freely, Da Ming Da Fang. The original intention really was like this. But later, the flavor changed. Let me tell you about the background of the Anti-Rightist Campaign. Something happened in 1956. In October 1956, the Hungarian Revolution broke out. Wasn't Hungary under the control of communism led by the Soviet Union? At that time, Hungarians were dissatisfied with the one-voice rule, corruption, and so on. They felt that Soviet socialism was a great infringement upon them. Hungarian intellectuals stood up to rebel, calling on the whole society to revolt. At first, the Soviet Union pulled back. But later, they thought, we can't retreat, we have to be tough. Otherwise, we can't maintain our status as the leader of the communist movement. So, in late 1956, the Soviet Union invaded Hungary and brutally suppressed the revolution. This event gave Mao Zedong, the paramount leader of the CCP at the time, a huge shock. Mao saw this and thought, this won't do. If you let these intellectuals offer opinions freely, they say everything. This will influence the faithful believers of our party. So, seeing the Hungarian Revolution of '56, Mao felt he should learn a lesson. Another factor was that after Stalin died, the Soviet Communist Party led by Khrushchev began to denounce the cult of personality, exposing various absurdities of the Stalin era. China and the Soviet Union fell out because of this. At this time, Mao Zedong also thought that if the wind of overthrowing Stalin's personality cult expanded to China, it would form a huge shock to the leader's prestige, which would be detrimental to the stability of his rule. So, putting these two things together, by the end of 1956, Mao pondered, we can't do this speaking out freely. But this process can also show which people are not of one heart with the party, and which people are intentionally anti-party. So at this time, the initial "let 100 flowers blossom" quickly developed into an open conspiracy, Yungmo, to lure the snake out of the hole, shifting towards the anti-rightist direction. Thus, the vigorous anti-rightist campaign began. But at the beginning, these young people didn't know this. They didn't know what was going on. Xu Hongci was at the Shanghai First Medical College. He saw that no one was posting big character posters to offer opinions. The leadership mobilized them. You young people should be brave enough to offer suggestions to help our government serve the people better. Xu Hongci was a hot-blooded youth. He was just 23 years old and was being heavily groomed by the party. He thought, if I don't stand up now, when will I? A party member must think of the country. I must stand up. So, he united with 14 classmates in his dormitory and began to publicly offer suggestions to the party. What opinions did he raise? There were 3 main points. Number 1, reporting only good news and hiding the bad. Party propaganda only talks about the advantages of socialism, not the shortcomings. This is wrong. Number 2, over-reliance on the Soviets. You can't just bring in Soviet experts in our school. In the medical field globally, countries like Germany and the United States are very advanced. Shouldn't we introduce experts from other countries? Number 3, language curriculum. It's all Russian classes. Shouldn't English, German, and French be strengthened? All in all, they summarized 51 opinions. The next day, the big character poster with 51 opinions was posted. Xu Hongci did not expect that his personal Pandora's box had just been opened. He never imagined that these would become the evidence of his counter-revolutionary and the anti-party crimes later on. Next, the authorities swept all these up. By the end of 1956, he had turned into a big rightist, an anti-party, anti-socialist element. Expelled from the party. Expelled from public office. This misfortune smashed onto Xu Hongci with a crash. Xu Hongci was furious. Why? I am wholeheartedly for the party. Wholeheartedly for the people. How did offering a few suggestions end up like this? He was extremely disappointed deep inside. This disappointment wasn't just regarding the country or the people around him. His faith in the party was shaken tremendously at this time. Why? Humans are afraid that the things they firmly believe in are smashed to pieces in the face of hard facts. We say, a man cannot stand without trust. How did the government start? Let us speak out freely, offer suggestions to better serve the people. But after I offered suggestions, you rounded us up. And it wasn't just me, everyone around who offered suggestions was arrested and labeled rightists. How did we transform in one day from defenders of socialism into rightists frantically attacking socialism? Where is the government's credibility? You asked us to speak out freely, then lured the snake out of the hole, and even called it an open conspiracy, Young Mo. Who is the one not keeping their word here? We have a term now that everyone knows, called the Tacitus trap. It means when the government doesn't keep its word, it eventually loses credibility. Once trust is lost, no matter what the government leaders say, you don't believe it. We call this the Tacitus trap. Wasn't the open conspiracy back then a classic Tacitus trap? And Chinese people understand this logic. Think back to the reform of Shongyang during the era of Duke Xiao of Qin. To change the weak state of the Qin kingdom, where did he start? The government must keep its word. But what if the common people don't trust the government? Shongyang thought of a method. He erected a wooden pole at the east gate of the Qin capital. It was thick and long. He posted a notice, whichever strong man can move this piece of wood to the west gate, just carry it over, and I will give you 50 taels of gold. At the market price of the Qin state at that time, carrying this wood to the other side was not worth 50 taels of gold. Impossible. All the onlookers treated this notice as a joke. The officials are just making fun of us. Officials never keep their word, they lie to amuse us commoners. No one accepted the challenge. Hey, then a strong man in the crowd stepped forward, weighed the wood in his hands, and asked the official, if I really carry the wood over, will you really give me the money? The official said, definitely. Our Lord Shongyang said we will certainly pay you. Okay, this strong man shouldered the wood. It was a bit tiring, but he soon successfully carried the wood to the designated spot. Sure enough, the official immediately gave him the gold. The people watching the excitement thought, oh my, the government really pays. I regret not taking that chance. After that, whatever laws Shongyang promulgated, the people accepted them. But if Shongyang had said, move this wood, and then, ha, you fool, I was just tricking you, do you think anyone would believe Shongyang when he promulgated laws later? No one would. In Chinese history, this is called erecting a piece of wood to establish trust. We all know now that a country cannot stand without integrity. Integrity is the foundation of a nation. That open conspiracy style of anti-rightist campaign chilled the hearts of countless patriots and intellectuals. So, Xu Hongci was devoid of all hope at this time. How could it be like this? Inevitably, he grumbled. He grumbled to his girlfriend. He said 2 sentences to her. The first sentence was, whether I am correct or Mao Zedong is correct, we will see in 300 years. The second sentence was, if it doesn't work out, I'll run abroad. Doesn't the proletariat revolution know no national borders? Hearing these 2 sentences now, they sound at most like words spoken in anger. But back then, these 2 sentences were counter-revolutionary speech that could cost him his life. Guess what? His girlfriend reported him the very next day. Truly a shameless villain. While reporting on others is a tumor of humanity that exists all over the world, in China during the Cultural Revolution era, countless flowers of evil, reporting on friends, relatives, even parents and children, bloomed, and they lived very vividly. This is truly worth our reflection. His girlfriend's report was disastrous. Originally, you were just expelled from the party, but now you are a counter-revolutionary. A rightist must be arrested. Right? So, they arrested Xu Hongci. He was to be sent to the Beimaling labor reform farm in Anhui. This Beimaling farm is 250 kilometers away from Shanghai. At this time, Xu Hongci's mother went to the leadership of the medical college and said, you leaders should stand up and say something. I just want to ask you one thing. Can you explain to me, under the Kuomintang era, I raised my son to become a Communist Party member. But under the Communist Party era, you actually say my son is a rightist? He has actually degenerated? Whose responsibility is this? Is it the child's own responsibility? Does the party and the government have any responsibility? His principal and those in charge were speechless, and they dared not make a sound. Why? Because this matter was not something the school alone could decide. On August 2, 1956, it was even in the People's Daily. 3,000 teachers and students of Shanghai Medical College denounced the traitor Xu Hongci. No one dared to plead for mercy. Just like that, Xu Hongci was confusedly sent to the Beimaling farm in Anhui. When he got to the farm, the conditions couldn't compare to Shanghai. He suffered. Think about it, Xu Hongci was a top-tier technological talent at the time. Doing menial work there every day, could he feel good in his heart? He was angry. What crime did I commit? I was wholeheartedly for the party, for the country, for the people. You put me here, can I tolerate this grievance? This man was born with a fierce nature. He was angry and couldn't figure it out. So he wrote letters to the medical college, saying, "You must let me go back." Of course, the higher-ups definitely wouldn't let him go. Xu Hongci thought, "You won't let me go? Damn it, I'll run myself." December 14, 1958. Deep winter. This labor reform farm wasn't a real prison, there were guards. But it wasn't strictly watched like a prison. So Xu Hongci successfully ran out. After running out, he bought a train ticket and returned to Shanghai. When he returned to Shanghai and his mother saw he had escaped, mother and son held each other and wept bitterly. His mother said, "Hide at home. We have a cellar." But he hadn't been hidden for even half a month before he was caught. Why? Although there was no internet back then and police didn't know where he went so quickly, after a while, both sides exchanged telegrams and figured it out. Wouldn't the police run to your house to block you? Even now. If there is a fugitive, they have to stake out your house, right? So, Xu Hongci was caught very quickly. Once caught, you get sent back. They sent him directly back to the farm. The treatment was even worse then, doing rough work, heavy work. Xu Hongci was not reconciled. He made up his mind, I have to run again. Where did he plan to run this time? It seemed he couldn't stay in China. If I want to carry the proletarian revolution to the end, I have to go abroad. Where to go? I heard Nehru in India is also leading a revolution. I'll go to India. How to get to India? He had geographical knowledge. He knew he had to go out via Tibet. He devised a plan. How did he run? At that time, these convicts were put together to work. At night, they slept on a large communal bunk. You ran away last time? This time is equivalent to solitary confinement for you. It wasn't as strict as the small cells in modern prisons, it was just a warehouse. At that time, his hygiene and diet were poor, and he ended up eating something bad at night and had constant diarrhea. He needed to go out to the toilet in the middle of the night. But the guard didn't agree. Xu Hongci said, "Fine, if you don't let me out, I'll crap right here in the room." The guard couldn't stand him, so he went out. But one time, the door wasn't locked. Xu Hongci took this opportunity and ran out with a few buddies. After running out and asking around, he found out that he couldn't go to India via Tibet anymore. Because in 1959, the Dalai Lama fled to India. The China-India border was at swords points, that route was probably impassable. He thought, where else can I go? He used to read maps often and had geographical knowledge. I'll run to Yunnan. If I cross Yunnan, I can enter Myanmar. They say Myanmar is also having a revolution, I'll join the revolution there. So, he trekked over mountains and rivers. Think about it, going from Anhui to Yunnan, that's 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers. The suffering on the road goes without saying. Eating earthworms, eating frogs. Hunger and thirst, traveling by dawn and sleeping by night. He suffered enough on this road. But Xu Hongci had good physical fitness and loved sports. When he was young, he was good at basketball and swimming. Just like that, he ran all the way to Yunnan. But the map he read was drawn in the early 1950s. Because the civil war between the Kuomintang and the communists hadn't ended in that area at that time, by the time he was escaping, the border line between Myanmar and Vietnam region had changed. Xu Hongci didn't know. He followed the impression of his original map and went straight to Yunnan. Past Kunming, to Lushui. When he got to Lushui, he prepared to rest, thinking he hadn't reached the border yet. But look at him after the journey, disheveled hair, looking like neither human nor ghost. He thought he'd go to a barber shop for a haircut and a restaurant for a meal. He thought it would be fine. He had some money and food coupons his mother gave him before he left. But at the border, the inspection was stricter than elsewhere. Is this some reactionary element? They reported him immediately. The police came and caught him. When asked, he claimed ignorance of everything. He dared not say, "I ran away from Baymaling farm." That would be disastrous. They saw this man didn't look like a good person, stammering and saying nothing. So they arrested him and put him in a temporary jail, a small cell. At this time, he was scared. Because once the police in Yunnan and Shanghai verified his identity and found out he escaped from Baymaling farm, it was over. Prison sentence was inevitable. So, he had to run out within this short time window of communication, roughly 15 to 30 days. Locked in this room, he pondered, how can I get out? He discovered the wall was that kind of earthwood structure, wooden boards with mud bricks in between. The earth was loose. He took advantage of mealtime and stole a stainless steel spoon. Hey, this reminds you of Andy Dufresne in the movie The Shawshank Redemption, right? Xu Hongci was about the same, except he dug with a stainless steel spoon. What if the wall was too hard to dig? The earth was solid. He stood up, peed on it to soften the wall, and then continued digging. Hard work pays off. After digging for about half a month, he actually dug through. On this day, he was ready to run. He was smug, thinking no one had noticed. He clawed at the earth, measured it, his head could fit through. If the head fits, the body fits. He tested it, then came back and used his hand to claw at the wall from the outside, wanting to make the hole a bit bigger. As soon as his hand went out, a burst of sharp pain. There were pliers outside waiting for him, they clamped onto his hand. It turned out the guards had been watching for a long time. The guards were just toying with him. I was just waiting for you to finish the job before catching you. I'll play with you a bit. They pinned him down immediately. Not 2 days after being pinned down, the verification information from Shanghai arrived. It said, this person is a rightist counter-revolutionary, expelled from the party and public office. He has escaped from Baymaling farm twice. Including this time, it is his third prison break. According to current Chinese criminal law, if you break out of prison 3 times, you probably won't get out for the rest of your life. But at that time, the judicial system wasn't very sound, and there were no strict regulations. Looking at this man, he was also quite pitiable. Moreover, during his detention, he really made a deep impression on the guards. Why? Think about it, he was a man of both literary and martial arts back then. Physics, chemistry, medicine, he knew it all. If someone had a minor illness, he could treat it. In the China of that era, he could be called an elite talent. So, when sentencing finally came, they only sentenced him to 6 years in prison. By now, you can probably guess it, he decided he was going to break out again. But at this time, he met a very good guard here named Wang Jinru. Many years later, when both were elderly men, they took a photo together. It was quite touching. Wang Jinru said, I have never seen a young man as talented as you. Don't run anymore. I'll look after you here. You'll be released in 6 years. In 6 years, you won't even be 30. Go back to your home in Shanghai then, your old mother is thinking of you. Don't let her worry about you wandering in exile. Moved by Wang Jinru's persuasion, Xu Hongci thought, hey, don't run. Long-term exile isn't a way to live either. 6 years is just 6 years. He really stayed honestly for 6 years. During these 6 years, with his abilities, he did a lot of good deeds. These 6 years passed, and it was 1965. You know that 1 year later, in 1966, the proletarian cultural revolution would arrive. He had completed his sentence and was released. However, at that time, the local policy for reforming prisoners involved forced job placement. Although you were released, the policy from above was that you were not allowed to leave this farm. He was serving his sentence in the Lijiang area of Yunnan. They needed many people to work there. I released you, yes. You have freedom, you can stroll in the town. But you must report back at night, and you must do the work you are supposed to do. He was different from the prisoners only in that he had partial freedom, but he still had to stay in this remote place to labor. Xu Hongci wouldn't accept it. I've already done 6 years in prison, what more do you want? I miss my mother, I have to go back. The authorities said no. At this time, a new prison warden was sent, named Li Guangrong. This Li Guangrong had no education, a boorish man. Li Guangrong said, "Kid, you're rebelling? These intellectuals just have no awareness. They are hard to manage. I'm going to fix him." Li Guangrong beat and scolded him, trying to crush Xu Hongci into submission. But Xu Hongci was a tough nut to crack. "You treat me like this? I just won't submit." The two were at daggers drawn. Do you think Xu Hongci could have a good outcome? 1966 arrived. During the Cultural Revolution, the Communist Party organization was extremely cruel to those with historical problems. Li Guangrong took this opportunity to persecute him to death. Finally, do you know what result he got Xu Hongci? He actually sentenced Xu Hongci to another 20 years. They moved him to a key labor reform site in Lijiang. By then, this place had become a prison. Digging through a mud wall to escape? Impossible. Sentenced to 20 years. Xu Hongci was devoid of all hope. It's over, it's over. My life ends here. No, Xu Hongci thought, this won't do. Thinking it over, I still have to run. This is the sentence we mentioned earlier, some birds are not meant to be caged, their feathers are just too bright. Xu Hongci was such a person. Even if I die, I must die standing. I will absolutely not yield to you. You try to fix me? I can't beat you, but I'll grit my teeth and you just wait. He began to figure out how to run. He realized that to break out, with walls this high, he couldn't do it without a ladder. He had skilled hands. He knew carpentry, turning, and fitting, and he had become a mainstay worker. He collected materials to make a ladder. But if you make a ladder that big, where do you put it? You'll get caught. He used mortise and tenon structures so he could disassemble the ladder and hide the various parts separately. Then, he could assemble it into a ladder very quickly. Then he carefully observed which part of the prison was a blind spot. He made the parts for the ladder and put them in that blind spot. Covered with grass or burlap so no one could tell. No one went to check that blind spot. He spent a long time preparing these ladder parts and placed them at the designated spot. After these preparations were done, when should he run? Think about it, high prison walls, searchlights, police with guns, wolfhounds. Hard to run. He discovered that he only had a chance if there was a power outage. When do power outages happen? Every summer is the peak for electricity usage. There are bound to be a few days of blackouts in the summer. I have to catch those blackout days. He waited for the chance to escape. Finally, he waited until August 7, 1969. At noon that day, the prison guard announced, peak electricity usage, power outage tonight. Everyone sleep half an hour early. Instead of 10 o'clock, it's now 9:30. Just like that, on this evening, Xu Hongci stayed calm. He avoided people, pretended to be sick, and didn't even come out for dinner. But during roll call, he had to stand and shout present extra loud. When lights out came, he stuffed rice straw and things inside his pillow and quilt, disguising it as him lying there sleeping. Doesn't the Shawshank Redemption have this plot too? When Andy Dufresne was about to run, he rolled up the bedding to look like a human shape. At this time, 9:30 p.m., he had already secretly mixed out and was hiding under a flower bed, lying on his stomach. He waited until past 11:00 at night. Indeed, there was no movement at all. Plus the power outage, it was pitch black everywhere, no searchlights. He ran to that blind spot in the corner, took out the ladder, connected it into a complete ladder, and leaned it against the wall. "Bad news," he said. "How did I learn my math? A single mistake." He ended up being short a section to reach the top of the wall. It wasn't that he miscalculated, he calculated the wall height, but the wall had barbed wire on top of it. He hadn't calculated the barbed wire. If you jump out from the corner, the barbed wire will scratch you all over. And you won't be able to jump out. You must have something higher than the barbed wire to jump out. Outside was grass. He was anxious. Is all my effort wasted? I say, heaven never cuts off a man's path, the lucky man has his own help from the heavens. He turned his head and saw, not far from the corner, 2 carrying poles, bien dan, that had been used to carry things during the day. Great! He took the carrying poles and looked, the length was just right. We all know carrying poles are basically long. He connected these 2 carrying poles to the ladder, just enough to knock down the barbed wire. He jumped down along the wall. Bang! The moment he landed, he didn't care about the pain from the fall, he took to his heels and ran. Seeing that scene in the Shawshank Redemption where Andy Dufresne comes out of the saw pipe, takes off his shirt in the heavy rain, you know that feeling. I only understood Xu Hongci's state of mind at that time after seeing the scene of Andy Dufresne running joyfully in the rain. Facing 20 years of prison in the future, and suddenly he ran out. What kind of mood was that? It could be said it was like a tiger returning to the mountain, a dragon returning to the sea. He escaped the prison, but there were still heavy checkpoints on the road. So, what preparations did this clever man make in prison? He could write imitation song-style characters very well. He used this style to simulate and write a letterhead for the Yunnan Province Yunnan Revolutionary Committee. Then he used dry soap to carve a few seals. Having stolen some red ink paste in prison over a long time, he forged 3 introduction letters and carried them with him. Just like Andy Dufresne had a plastic bag with things to use after prison when he was in the saw. Xu Hongci carried these things. On the road, if he encountered militia inspections anywhere, he took out the introduction letter. Look, Yunnan Yunnan Revolutionary Committee. I am from this factory, I want to return to Shanghai. The reason was visiting relatives. He muddled through. You see, in that era, knowing these skills was so useful. Back then, it could save your life. He planned to run from Yunnan to Sichuan. He thought Sichuan would have a train station, and he could take a train back to Shanghai to see his old mother. He hadn't seen her for years, he missed her to death. He ran forward. Running and running, he calculated the distance. Based on the days and his daily walking distance, it should take more than half a month to get out of Yunnan and reach Sichuan. Ahead, the Jinsha River blocked the way. The water in the Jinsha River had risen. The locals by the river said, "Young man, what are you doing? You're going to your death. The water is so high, can you cross it? Walk forward another 100 kilometers or so, there's a bridge." He couldn't wait. The police dogs and everything were catching up from behind. The warden, Li Guangrong, saw he had escaped the next day and went crazy. This is terrible, this man ran away. Dispatch all police to chase him immediately. Just like in the Shawshank Redemption, the warden sees Andy has escaped, and the next day there's a carpet search. Pursuers were chasing tight behind, and the Jinsha River blocked the front. Xu Hongci had no choice. He threw himself into the clear current, diving in with a splash. Because of his good physical fitness and persistent exercise in prison, he actually swam across the Jinsha River, escaping death. Anyway, surviving in the wild, he made it to Sichuan. He got on a train and muddled his way back to Shanghai. When he arrived in Shanghai, his mother saw him. "You're still alive? Not dead?" There was no news all these years. Mother and son hugged and cried. His mother said, "You can't stay in Shanghai, they will find you soon. I'll get you some money." His mom took out all her savings, scraped together less than 100 yuan, and gave him some national food coupons. Then she gave him some dry food to carry. "Go, child. This country cannot tolerate you. Run abroad if you can." Where to run? Xu Hongci thought, the Yunnan route doesn't work. I don't know the situation in Tibet. Hey, I'll go towards Mongolia. Just like that, all the way north. On this journey, as a Shanghai native running wildly north, the suffering goes without saying. Xu Hongci didn't elaborate on this part of history when he recalled it later. Think about it, closing his eyes and thinking of that suffering, he didn't want to recall the pain. Anyway, let's skip the journey. Where did he get to? This place is called Ehrenhot. Where is Ehrenhot? It is at the northernmost tip of the Inner Mongolia Autonomous Region of China today. It is the border between Inner Mongolia and the country of Mongolia. Mongolian girls toast you, if you don't drink, they dance right there. Drinking bowl after bowl. The folk customs are sturdy and uninhibited. When he got to Ehrenhot, he reached the border. I say, life is like a book, without coincidences, there are no stories. Without these coincidences, there wouldn't be such a person. Most likely, people escaping like this died halfway. Only one or two survived, there must be coincidences. At night, the Mongolian border had searchlights. But precisely at that time, the searchlight malfunctioned and went out for 2 minutes. Later, the Mongolian border guard said, "This probability is probably less than 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000, and you caught it." At this time, he couldn't find his bearings. So he could only walk along the border watchtowers, sticking close to them. As luck would have it, that place was a radar blind spot. The radar didn't sweep it. Talk about a coincidence. Then, under the barbed wire, he used pliers to make a hole and drilled through. He drilled through. The other side, wasn't that Mongolia? At this moment, Xu Hongci turned around. One can imagine there might have been tears in his eyes. Because he might never return to his motherland in this life. He turned his body, didn't look back, and walked forward. But how far could he walk? Is border defense child's play? He hadn't walked a few kilometers before the Mongolian border soldiers caught him. Let me tell you another coincidence. This is time and fate. Originally, Mongolia's rule was that anyone smuggling across from the Chinese side would be immediately repatriated. If Xu Hongci were repatriated under those circumstances, he would be shot in China, 100%. But when he crossed, it was already September 10, 1972. On that day, for months prior, Mongolia had promulgated a law: smugglers caught must be interrogated before repatriation. You can't repatriate directly, we have to interrogate first. Just this one law, announced for months earlier, saved Xu Hongci's life. Why was there such a law? Let me tell you. Do you forget what happened on September 13, 1971? A major event in Chinese history, military vice commander Lin Biao died in a plane crash in Underkan, Mongolia. That event shook the whole of Mongolia. The Soviet Union told the Mongolians, if this situation happens again, you cannot blindly contact China and send people back immediately. You must interrogate. Mongolia would interrogate small smugglers. But for big political prisoners, they had to be handed over to the Soviet Union for interrogation. They caught Xu Hongci, interrogated him, and listened. They said, "Is this experience of yours nonsense? Are you making up a story?" Xu Hongci said, "You don't have to disbelieve me. I have evidence. Your archives definitely have China's People's Daily. Find the People's Daily from August 2, 1956. Is there an article titled 3,000 Teachers and Students of Shanghai Medical College Denounce Traitor Xu Hongci? Look for it. The Soviets looked, and it was really there. The interrogators felt, this man is truly amazing, a real talent. And his situation is worthy of sympathy. They said, how about this? Since you are here, we want to know something from you. You were at the Shanghai Medical College and worked in the East China Bureau. You must know about those old leaders of the East China Bureau. Provide us with some intelligence. Also, you've been in prison all these years. They say so many people starved to death in China. Tell us how many died in prison. Xu Hongci flatly refused. Xu Hongci said, my motherland is not doing well right now, it is full of sin and almost put me to death. But that is, after all, my motherland. I don't believe it will be like this forever. It will get better in the future. We two countries are like neighbors. I was beaten and wronged at home, so I ran to your house. You insist on asking about my family's privacy, who is sleeping with whom, can I tell you? This is human nature. The interrogators heard this and thought it made sense. But you smuggled over and won't provide intelligence. The death penalty is spared, but punishment cannot be avoided. They fined him to do 1 year of labor. They sent him to the coldest province in Outer Mongolia to work as a laborer. Fortunately, his health was good, otherwise, like Su Wu shepherding sheep in the Han dynasty, he would have died by the North Sea. But for him, think about it, from being sent to the farm in 58, multiple prison breaks, the warden in Yunnan fixing him, living those days, finally running north. It was all fear and trembling, life hanging by a thread. Now, although he was doing hard labor in a bitter cold land and living like a ghost, psychologically he was at peace. I temporarily have no threat of death. So, his days in Mongolia were very comfortable. Why? He could sleep at night without fear. And at this time, good things came, he actually found love. He was almost 40 years old by then. In his 40th year, he went to the hospital for an illness and met a Mongolian nurse named Oyuna. She was quite pretty. What did Oyuna say? I saw he was different from other men. He is smart, capable, works better than Mongolian men, and is serious. Most importantly, after we got married, he cooks all 3 meals a day. That was unimaginable in Mongolia. Look how good he is to me. Of course, Oyuna was 21 and he was 40, a bit of an age gap, but that couldn't stop love. They soon had 2 children. At this time, he used the money saved from a year's wages to buy a radio. He listened to it every day. He listened to news from his hometown and sometimes to Soviet broadcasts. Let me tell you some background knowledge. At that time, Sino-Soviet relations were bad. Otherwise, how could Nixon visit China in '72? Otherwise, how could the US pull China together to resist the Soviet Union? China and the US getting together was also to deal with the Soviet Union. It just so happened that Xu Hongci picked up these broadcasts. He heard about the reform and opening up, the 3rd plenary session, the discussion on standards of truth, the defeat of the 2 whatevers, Deng Xiaoping coming to power, and Hua Guofeng stepping down. He heard all this. He felt the motherland was about to change, it was different from his time. He kept writing letters to Shanghai, forwarded through the embassy. Finally, his mother received them and wrote back. Child, things have taken a turn. Around 1981, his mother repeatedly ran to the Shanghai Public Security Bureau and Labor Reform Bureau to appeal for her son. Finally, the Shanghai Medical College decided to rehabilitate Xu Hongci's historical errors and implement the policy. But the Yunnan side didn't admit it. Here, you are a prison escapee. We were going to shoot you, how can we rehabilitate you? Being a rightist in Shanghai has nothing to do with me. At this time, there was no choice. Xu Hongci thought of another way. In China, having people in the court makes things easier. Didn't he work in the East China Bureau back then? He had 2 old leaders he still knew. Who were they? One was Huang Xinbai, who later became the Vice Minister of Education. The other was even more powerful, Qiu Shi, who later became a member of the Politburo Standing Committee. He wrote to these two old leaders. They saw it. We knew this young man back then. Heard he was still alive? Investigate this Yunnan situation for me. At that time, the Setting Things Right campaign led by Hu Yaobang had gone deep into all regions. Finally, Yunnan agreed to rehabilitate Xu Hongci. All these things were finalized in 1981, deciding to completely rehabilitate him. Then Xu Hongci said goodbye to his wife and children. I'll go back first to pave the way. In 1981, when he returned to Shanghai and arrived at the alley entrance, his mother cried until she couldn't stop. All the neighbors in the alley looked at him. You're still alive. Tears fell like rain, everyone cried. Then, seeing the policy implemented, Shanghai arranged it like this: you go to the education center of the Shanghai petrochemical plant to be a senior lecturer. We can arrange for your wife to work as a nurse at the petrochemical plant. The children will come back and go to school normally. It's all arranged. His heart settled. He returned to Mongolia and contacted the embassy, saying, I want to return to China. At first, Mongolia didn't agree and wouldn't issue passports. His Mongolian wife, Oyuna, got anxious. She went to the embassy to make a scene every day, and finally, they got the passports. At this time, the 3 children plus the couple, a family of 5, successfully returned to Shanghai in 1983. Seeing this ending, I should say, even I have to let out a long sigh. Let alone you all. Hearing this kind of pain and oppression in life, knowing that anyone's experience could be replicated on you at a specific moment. Story told to hear, I believe everyone feels similar to me, feeling both happiness and bitterness for Xu Hongci. Therefore, China's cultural revolution and political movements need to be reflected upon by the whole nation, not just 1 or 2 people. In 2008, Xu Hongci finally received the long-awaited retired veteran cadre certificate. Getting this certificate, he was content. 3 days after receiving this certificate, he passed away. He lived to be 75 years old. A person like this, wanting his own freedom and dignity at every moment. Although the era was absurd and evil, he used a nearly primitive, animalistic instinct to slap that era in the face. I should say, this kind of person leaves us the deepest memory of that era. Although they are rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, they represent an extremely great quality of our humanity. That is to constantly pursue freedom, constantly pursue truth, not resigning to live on one's knees in humiliation, or even just die directly. That's the end of my story for this episode. I am the 9 Dots Guy. Welcome to like and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you next time.